It is day 284 of the second Trump administration, and just tonight, the White House says military members will get paid tomorrow despite the government shutdown. The administration plans to use a mix of legislative and Pentagon funds, according to NBC News. Meanwhile, the 42 million Americans who depend on SNAP to buy their groceries may get some level of relief. A judge indicated she will likely order the Trump administration to use emergency money to fund the program in November. The money would not be able to cover a full month of benefits, and there would still be a delay since it takes the government several days to distribute the money. Of course, the programs in doubt for next month are because of the shutdown, and it is not the only one. Head Start benefits for kids in 41 different states will begin to be cut off this Saturday. Federal Head Start programs provide nutrition, childcare, and education for more than 60,000 children between the ages of 5 and younger. And as one Head Start participant explains, the problems are starting to snowball.
That's going to be a really huge impact, especially with the food stamps being possibly frozen in 2 days. Food is very, very expensive. It is so very expensive. We need security. We need representation and support. And that's not, in my opinion, a lot to ask for from the government. It's not a gender thing. We don't have to talk about that. Let's talk about the babies and the children. These are children that need to be fed and they're the future.
We are now, of course, in week 5 of the shutdown. And as Wired is reporting, the federal workers who are not getting paid, many of them are barely making it. They're working side gigs, relying on free food programs, and they are still struggling to pay their bills. And as far as who gets the blame, a new Washington Post poll shows 45% blame Donald Trump and Republicans, while 33% blame Democrats. One key detail, when you look at just independents, twice as many are blaming Republicans as they are Democrats. And just a few hours ago, the president ranted about Obamacare prices online, saying this, quote, "Rates are going through the roof for really bad health care. Do something, Democrats." Well, for fact's sake, it was Republicans that let Obamacare subsidies expire, and that is why premiums went through the roof. Democrats have been fighting to fix that. And as much as Donald Trump has ranted about how terrible Obamacare is, and many people have many justifiable gripes about it, he has not presented his alternative health care plan in the 10 years since he first announced he was running for president. All we've gotten is the idea of concepts of a plan. We've yet to see one. Now let's get smarter with the help of our leadoff panel tonight. Jake LaHutte is back, senior writer for Wired, covering the Trump White House. David Drucker, senior writer at The Dispatch. And John Ralston, CEO and editor of the Nevada Independent and an MSNBC political analyst. Jake, we're going to get to SNAP in a moment. But in just the last 30 minutes, the president posted something on social media that I think is a wow. He said that Republicans should get rid of the filibuster to end the shutdown. That is extraordinary.
The all-caps nuclear option from the President of the United States coming off a sleep-deprived overseas tour. I mean, look, I don't think John Thune's going to like this. I don't think a lot of people below Senate Republican leadership are going to like this.
And who's not going to like it? The NRA.
Yeah. And in my last conversation with Dems who were involved in this decision-making here, they're saying, look, I mean, they don't think the SNAP benefit deadline is moving the needle at all. But this is just a whole new wrench that I don't see any scenario in which this can help either reopen the government or jog something else loose.
Okay, David, on top of that, the president is now blaming Democrats for skyrocketing Obamacare premiums. Does he know that he is in some political trouble here on this one? Like, it doesn't take long to fact check your way to who's responsible for this one.
Yeah, look, the president doesn't like bad headlines. And so whether he's to blame or not, he's always going to shove the blame off. And that's what most politicians will do. But in this case, he actually does have some leverage here and some power, right? I mean, he could get Democrats and Republicans together into a room and he could negotiate a compromise. He could just push Republicans, who tend to do what he wants most of the time, to cut a deal on these Obamacare subsidy extensions.
But he's not asking anyone to do that. Hold on. He's not asking anyone to get in a room. He's now saying in the last 30 minutes. No, but he said, let's go with the nuclear option. The nuclear option does not involve getting any Democrats in the room.
Right. We were talking about what he could do.
Yes,
we
but let's talk about
what he
yeah.
is.
But let's go from
what
sure.
he is doing.
He could do a lot of things. Let's talk about what he's actually doing. The last thing he has suggested is that Democrats should do something about Obamacare prices, and that Republicans should enlist the nuclear option. That's what he's actually doing.
Well, correct. Of course, Democrats don't have the votes to do this, and because they're in the minority in both houses of Congress. And so there's a lot more going on here. And I think ultimately what this shutdown has become about is not policy, but the politics of power. And neither side has the incentive to do anything differently than they're doing now. Now, those incentives may change as the shutdown hurts more and more people and creates more frustrated Americans who are going to, take their frustration out on lawmakers. But I don't think we've reached a point yet where lawmakers on either side feel enough pressure to do anything differently. And that includes Republicans when it comes to these Obamacare extenders, even though so many of their voters rely on them. And that's partly because working class voters now vote Republican in greater numbers than they used to. And they're the sorts of Americans that rely on these subsidies.
With all due respect, I too am feeling that level of frustration at this very moment. Jake, let's talk about SNAP. About 40% of SNAP recipients are children. We are talking about feeding American children. Might that force the White House to actually push to, as David said, get people to the table, do something here?
Not yet. I mean, also a lot of working Americans, tens of thousands who work for companies like Walmart, McDonald's. My colleague David Gilbert had a great story on Wired today about all this misinformation going on online about essentially a replay of the welfare queen playbook. But just on David's point real quick, I mean, look, I think that the mood inside the White House is that we own the Senate Republicans, we jump, they say how high. However, I think if we look at Trump's approval rating, we're approaching a point where he's going to become less popular than your replacement rate Senate Republican, House Republican. And at that point, especially with this shutdown and the pressure they're going to get from their constituents with SNAP, this is kind of like the relationship between someone who, may have put on 20, 30 pounds and those old skinny jeans they want to get in. Like I'm not saying it's breaking, but it's fraying.
Maybe Ozempic time. All right, John, Nevada is one of the states suing the administration to force them to fund SNAP. What are people in your state telling you?
Well, I think they're the same as anywhere else, Stephanie. And you mentioned that the Attorney General here, Aaron Ford, is part of that lawsuit. He also happens to be running for governor. And the governor here has tried to reassure the public that they're going to find the money to fund these benefits. And he's gotten into a spat here with the state treasurer about how much the government, the state government can do. But listen, most Americans, I mean, I think it's funny that Jake attributes to sleep deprivation one of Trump's crazy tweets. He can have plenty of sleep and still tweet crazily. Let's face it. And most Americans don't know, they don't pay attention like the four crazy people right on the air right now about the filibuster and the ins and outs and the rules of the Senate. They are going to blame Trump and the Republicans, and that's what he's worried about. And one more thing, Stephanie, that I think is not just endemic to Nevada, and one of the graphics that you put up, the real problem Trump and the Republicans have is those numbers among independents, which every poll are now showing are going against Trump and the Republicans. Doesn't matter whether this is the subject or anything else. He has really slipped with independents. He's going to hold the base. He's going to hold the Senate Republicans and the House Republicans. But the real question, of course, and the two guys you have there in Washington know a lot more about this than I do, but shutdown fallout generally doesn't last that long. And as we all know, speaking of crazy tweets, there's going to be 14,000 of them between now and the next election. We may not even be talking about this.